Hello, and welcome to the REACH Collaboration User Training Series. My name is Jessica, and I'm here today to walk you through video 1 of 3 for your new User REACH Training Series. Today's video is going to be on Introduction to the REACH Collaboration System. The first thing I want to start out with today with you guys is going to be the login screen for the REACH collaboration system. If you do ever have any questions or do have troubles logging in, you can always click Forget Password or simply email an Epiphany Community Services staff member to help you out with this issue as well. Once you log into the REACH system, by default, you are going to land here in the accomplishment output page. The next thing you're going to notice, and I want to talk about right off the bat, are these 5 tabs along the top of the page. These are going to be the different areas or pages within REACH that you're going to be either entering data, pulling out data, or just even using to filter and view your data. The first one I want to talk about is this one, our Accomplishment Outputs tab. I briefly mentioned it a second ago, but this is going to be where you will be doing a bulk of your entries of your data. This is where you will be tracking all of your external activities for your coalition or organization. The types of outputs that are tracked here are going to be community actions, community changes, services provided, media, and resources generated. Generally speaking, these are the interventions and activities your coalition has completed to create policies, programs, procedures, and even practices in your community to help better your community and achieve your coalition's action planned items and things you plan to do in your community. The next area within REACH in the next tab I want to talk about is going to be organizational improvements. Organizational improvements are going to look like this page. You will also notice the title of the page near the top. Right here, it's going to be for you. The organizational improvements page by default is going to be where you track all of your internal activities. So by internal activities, this is going to be things within the coalition or organization that either the staff or the members are doing to increase the coalition as a whole's capacity to better serve the community. This can be done through organizational changes, trainings, or technical assistance. Your organizational changes could be things such as changes in staff, changes in bylaws or structure of the coalition. Trainings here are going to be trainings that the coalition/organization members and staff are attending to increase their knowledge to better serve the community and their intended audience. Technical assistance, our last one here, is going to be things such as getting assistance on a specific topic, usually more one-on-one or kind of one-to-many within the coalition, to improve the functionality of the coalition, such as getting a quick TA session from a lawyer about maybe how the coalition should update their bylaws and personnel policies and procedures. They have that explicit knowledge, being a lawyer and all, on how to make sure the coalition creates, sufficient bylaws and personnel policies and procedures that ultimately make sense and help the functionality of the coalition. These last two can sometimes sound a little bit similar. So if you still get them somewhat confused, don't worry. In your later training that you're going to have with an Epiphany Community Services staff member, you will receive more in-depth information on these, more in-depth examples, and we're able to answer any questions during that time as well. The next area in tab within REACH we're going to move on to is going to be key events. The key events tab will look like this, again noticing the title of the page near the top left-hand corner. And key events are going to be where you're tracking all of your external factors. The other way I like to look at this is where you'll be tracking your confounding variables. And by confounding variables, a lot of times this can be confusing for people, but we basically want you to be tracking all of those things that could be happening in your communities, amongst your youth, amongst your coalition members even, things that are really just happening in your community that have the potential to impact the work that you're doing, but they're things that the coalition has no control over or hand in making happen. So basically this could be something such as a drunk driving accident involving a youth who is drinking at a party on the weekend. That would be something that obviously could impact a coalition's work who is working on maybe underage drinking, we'll say. But it was something that the coalition had no control over. They didn't make this party happen. They didn't serve those kids the alcohol. They didn't tell this kid to drink. The coalition had no hand in making that event happen, but it could impact the work that they're doing in the community around that issue. Now, key events can be positive or negative. So be sure to don't always look for the negative ones. Be sure you are tracking both positive and negative ones. And the main reason we like to track key events is because we understand that organizations and coalitions do not operate in a bubble, as much as sometimes we wish they do. They are subject to those things that are happening in the environment, in the community, that are always changing. So we want to make sure that we're recording those as well and taking those into account when we come to that time of year where we're evaluating how effective our coalition has been and the things that we've been doing in our community. The next area in REACH we are going to be talking about is going to be the indicator tab. The indicator tab / page is going to look like this. This page is where the coalition will be tracking all of its outcome data. So this is going to be things such as survey data, like your quantitative data. It could be student surveys, it could be parent surveys, it could be community member surveys. It could also be data that the coalition is gathering from maybe the local law enforcement. It could also be data that you guys might be getting from, let's say, the police or the health department, other types of data like that. The indicator tab is especially great when it comes to graphing your indicators against all that other data that you've been recording in REACH under accomplishment outputs. The graphing indicators section allows you to select some different options here within these 3 tabs, which reflect our logic model that we use in REACH, all resulting in a lovely graph form here that is accompanied by a chart to show you your data for the selected options you have above. The nice thing here is we can see our indicator data or our outcome data graphed against those outputs that we've been recording. So it's really nice for a coalition who has plenty years of data like this one does here to be able to look at that percentage of, in this case, 30-day alcohol use and how, whether or not it's gone up or down, and how the coalition has worked to address that issue and what they have done in terms of how many things that they've done in their community. So that is our indicator tab. The last tab I want to talk about, and the first one on our list here, is the dashboard. You'll notice that when you click on the dashboard button, there is an option for either an old dashboard or the new dashboard. The new dashboard I will recommend using over the old one, just because eventually the old one will no longer be there. So today we're going to be covering the plain, just straight up dashboard here. And what the dashboard shows you is going to be a quick snapshot of your data in the REACH system. It's going to show it to you in a graphical form. So for those of you who like your graphs, to be able to show you a quick little snapshot of what the coalition has done, this is great for you. The first thing I want to point out is you have your date ranges over here, so feel free to plug in any kind of date range you want. Do a year, a month, a quarter, whatever you would like to do. You can include pending items, and as we move forward in your trainings, you will learn about pending items and what that means. Basically, it means you just want to include all your data, whether or not it has been per se reviewed by an Epiphany Community Services staff member. So sometimes people want to include this. Other times, people prefer not to include this because they want to make sure they're looking at all their data that has been reviewed and accepted. So it is up to you. Once we put in a date range there, our graph will automatically update when we click refresh. And the nice thing here that I want to talk about is this first row along the top. The first thing you guys will notice out of everything is this one. This is our outputs and whether or not how many or what percentage of our outputs are specific towards our goals. The output number is the total number of things you've entered under accomplishment outputs for said time frame. And then the specific to goal section tells us what percentage of those outputs, not including resources generated, are specific to the goals you said you'd be working on. So this is a newer feature within Reach because people were wanting to know whether or not they're typically, doing what they're supposed to be doing and working on what they said they'd be working on, right? Because sometimes coalition work can tend to get a little off focused. You find yourself working on something that you said you wouldn't be working on. Maybe it wasn't even in your action plan. So it's good to be able to have that specific to goal percentage there to always keep your coalition in check and almost keep your staff in check sometimes to be like, well, guys, hey, we only have 50% of our work specific to goal. We need to rein that in and make sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. So that's kind of a good little tip for that one. The next one is just a quick little summary of how many organizational improvements the coalition has had over that said time frame. So this basically tells you how much your staff and members are working towards improving their capacity to better serve your community. So that's a good number to always check in on as well. We don't want that to be super low, like 0 or 1, but it is okay for it to sometimes be on the lower end, maybe only 2, 3. It really just depends on how actively the coalition's been going to trainings during said time frame and whatnot. The next box along the top is our people served, or the total number of people we have served over this date range. And this is nice for those of you who need a quick little snapshot of how many people you're serving during a said reporting period. This can be helpful when you're talking to local community members, talking about what you're doing, or even just sharing with your coalition members about, the total number of people we have served and helped throughout said time frame. The next one is the number of people reached through media. So this will basically tell us how many total impressions our media entries have received or acquired over that said time frame. So that's also good too to see kind of how big of a reach our media is having. The last one on this first row is going to be the total value of resources generated for that said time frame. This is great for those of you who have certain funding that requires a match component. It's nice to be able to come in here and throw in a date range and check, the progress of how much your coalition has generated in that match funding that you need. If you're going to be using it for this, just make sure you are aware that if you are tracking grant money under resources generated as well, you will have to subtract that from this value generated total here. If you aren't tracking your grant funds under resources generated as cash, don't worry about it, and this number will be very accurate for your match for said time frame. The next thing I want to talk about is going to be these different graph components you see down here at the bottom and what it's basically telling us. So the first thing I want to talk about are the different tabs we have along the top here. So if you ever want to break it up amongst one of these specific output types, you can feel free to do that among those. The other thing I want to talk about are these different colored bars you see here and our different logic models represented along the left-hand side. The nice thing about these graphs is that we can simply hover over these in Reach and it will show us what they mean. So basically, this is telling me, this dark blue bar right here, that my coalition has had 4 community actions working towards marijuana in my community during this said time frame that I've plugged in. So it's really helpful there. And the other nice thing about Reach is we can actually take this to kind of a filtering aspect. And let's say we wanted to know what those entries were. All we have to do is simply click on that bar and it pulls up a quick little snapshot of those entries for us. lets us know the descriptions. You know, if we wanted to share those, we could pull these out here. The other nice thing is that from the dashboard then, when we click on here and it brings us to this little pull out, we can export to Excel from here. So really great way to filter through your data and then export it using our green X along the right-hand side to be able to use it, share it, whatever else we want to do with it. The next area, like I said, these tabs along the top allow us to look at different areas within our dashboard and how it looks and functions. So under community action, this is what it's going to look like here. Notice as well when we get to strategies, we're going to see, you know, so hopefully you are familiar with those. If not, be sure to check out Epiphany Community Services webinar on these 7 behavior change strategies, or be sure to talk to your personal trainer when you get in your session, your one-on-one session with one of us, about those strategies to make sure you feel comfortable being able to use those, knowing what each one means. So if you do have questions, feel free to let us know at that point as well. So the dashboard is really quite functional, and it's, like I said, basically a tool for you to be able to use, filter through your data, take some quick snapshots. The graphs on this page are not downloadable, but you can take screenshots and use them through that way as well. So that would be my best tip there. And my other tip with using the dashboard is going to be just getting in and messing around with it. And I say that in a playful term because you can't really do anything to mess anything up in the dashboard. If you just get in here, throw in a date range, click around on some of these bars and whatnot, you're not going to mess anything up in the back end of the system or delete data or anything crazy like that. So feel free to get in here, play around, become familiar with your dashboard, because once you start getting some of that data in and you're getting into, you know, the 100 entries mark, the 200 entries mark, it's really cool and helpful to be able to pull this up and look at your data in graphical form. Now, just to do a quick recap for our first video today, the 5 different tabs within Reach are going to be the dashboard, where you can filter your data. There is the accomplishment outputs tab, where you track all of your external activities using the 5 different output types listed there. The next tab is the organizational improvements tab, which is where you track all of your internal activities using the 3 different types listed there as well. The 4th tab is the key events tab, which is where you track all of your external factors, or like we said earlier, confounding variables, whichever you prefer to say. And then our last tab is the indicator tab, which collects all of your coalition's outcome data. And we do typically handle all of that data for you, so you do not have to worry about entering any data there. Feel free to send it to an Epiphany Community Services staff member, and we will take care of entering all the data for you. And all you have to use that tab for is that nice graphing function that you can pull that data out with. That wraps up our video for today. Thank you guys for watching the first introduction video of this training series on Reach collaboration. If you have any questions, please feel free to email Jessica at the email provided below, or any other Epiphany Community Service staff members as well. Thank you guys for watching, and have a great day.